The lawyer slid the folder across the table, like he didn't want to touch it any longer than necessary. His fingers hesitated before letting go, and when he finally did, the papers made a soft, dry sound against the scarred oak surface. The kind of sound you hear right before something breaks. "Marissa," he said quietly, lowering his voice even though the room was empty. "If the judge prioritizes biological rights, we could lose." For a second, I didn't breathe. The fluorescent lights above us hummed, flickering just enough to make my temples ache. Somewhere down the courthouse hallway, a door slammed shut, sharp, final like punctuation at the end of a sentence I didn't want to hear. My hands started shaking. Hands that had unclogged hospital drains, lifted gurneys, patched pipes at St. Luke's Medical Center for over 2 decades. Hands that never shook, not in emergencies, not when alarms blared, not when lives depended on me staying steady. But now they trembled like I was holding something fragile instead of paper. Across from me, Eli didn't move. 17 years old. Long limbs, narrow shoulders, posture slightly folded inward like the world was always a little too loud for him. His eyes, calm, observant, gray-green, were fixed on a small crack in the wall as if he were memorizing it. Then he leaned toward me. Close enough that I could smell the mint from the gum he always chewed when he was thinking. And he whispered 6 words that changed everything. "Just let her talk." I blinked. What? I wanted to grab him, shake him gently, tell him that talking was exactly how she destroyed us. Talking was how she explained herself. Talking was how she justified leaving. Talking was how she disappeared 11 years ago and never came back. But Eli didn't raise his voice, didn't look scared, didn't look angry. He just sat there, still, composed like a stone in rushing water. Waiting. My throat tightened. I turned back to the lawyer. "What do you mean we could lose?" He rubbed his forehead like he'd already said this too many times today. "Family court isn't logical. You raised him. You provided everything. But legally," he paused. "Don't say it," I snapped. The words echoed off the courthouse walls, harsher than I meant. I hated myself for it instantly. Eli's fingers twitched once on his knee, then went still. The lawyer lifted his hands. "I'm not attacking you. I'm telling you what her side will argue." My stomach twisted. "Elaine's attorney will say you isolated Eli, that you controlled access, that now, because of the money, you're blocking a mother from her rightful role." Money. That word burned. I thought of her standing on my porch weeks ago, rain soaking her perfect coat, mascara untouched, voice trembling in all the right places. "I just want my child back," she'd said. Like she hadn't walked out on him with a suitcase, and a goodbye he never got to answer. Eli's whisper echoed again. "Just let her talk." The lawyer leaned forward. "Our best move is restraint. Let her testify, let her explain herself. Don't interrupt, don't react." I turned to Eli. "Is that what you meant?" He nodded once, slow, certain. And that's where this story really begins. Not with the ruling. Not with the money. But with the night she left. 11 years earlier, Davenport smelled like wet pavement and river wind. It was late October. The Mississippi was swollen and dark, moving fast like it was trying to escape something. Leaves clung to the curb in soggy piles, already giving up. I came home from my shift tired to the bone. My scrubs smelled like bleach and metal. My boots were still damp from a pipe leak behind the ER wing. The kitchen light was on. The radio played low, some old country song fading in and out with the static. And Eli was sitting at the table. 6 years old, knees pulled to his chest, rocking gently. Elaine stood at the counter, her purse on her shoulder. At first, I didn't see the suitcase. I thought she was running out again. Late-night errands were her thing back then. Then I saw it. By the back door. My chest tightened. "What's going on?" I asked. She didn't turn around. The sink water ran, even though the dish was already clean. "I can't do this anymore, Marissa." I laughed once, a reflex. "Do what? It's spaghetti night." She turned. Hair curled, makeup done, ready. "Eli needs more than I can give," she said carefully. "This life is suffocating." I glanced at him. He stared at the tablecloth, tracing the same square over and over with his finger. Quiet, always quiet when tension filled the room. "We just got the diagnosis," I said. "We barely—" "Exactly," she cut in. "Therapies, meetings, labels, I didn't sign up for this." Something inside me cracked. "You didn't sign up for your child." Her jaw tightened. "Don't twist this." I stepped forward. My boots squeaked on the linoleum. Outside, headlights idled in the alley. That's when I knew. "You're leaving," I said, "right now." She grabbed the suitcase handle. "He'll be fine with you," she said. "With me." I looked at Eli. His fingers clenched the tablecloth like he was holding the world together. She didn't look back. The door opened. Cold air rushed in. Then it closed. And that was the moment my life changed. How Marissa learns to stay, and how Eli begins quietly preparing for a future no one else sees. The morning after Elaine left, I didn't wake up to silence. I woke up to routine. The alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., the same dull buzz I'd heard for years. For half a second, I forgot everything. I reached across the bed out of habit, then my hand landed on cold sheets. That's when it hit. The house felt heavier, like the walls had leaned inward overnight. I sat up slowly, listening. No footsteps, no humming from the kitchen, just the refrigerator cycling on and off, steady and indifferent. Then I heard it. A soft rhythmic sound. Eli rocking. I pulled on a hoodie and walked down the hall. His bedroom door was open just enough to let the hallway light spill across the floor. He sat on the bed, knees tucked under his chin, rocking forward and back, forward and back. He hadn't slept. "Hey," I said gently, keeping my voice low. He didn't answer. I sat on the edge of the bed, close enough to be there, far enough not to crowd him. I'd already learned that lesson the hard way. "She'll come back," he said suddenly. Not asking, statting. I swallowed. "Maybe," I said, because I didn't know how to say probably not without breaking something in him. He nodded once, as if filing the answer away. That was Eli. He collected information when the world didn't make sense. The next few weeks blurred together, like a bad dream you don't wake up from. Paperwork, appointments, insurance calls that went nowhere, school meetings where people spoke slowly to me like grief had lowered my IQ. I learned new words I never wanted to know. IEP, sensory processing, occupational therapy. I learned how to translate silence. When Eli went quiet, it didn't mean he was calm. It meant he was overloaded. When he rocked, it wasn't misbehavior. It was regulation. When he lined up his shoes every night before bed, it wasn't obsessive. It was control in a world that had taken everything else. I also learned how alone you can feel even when people say they're around. Church ladies brought casseroles the first month. By the third month, they stopped asking how we were doing. Friends said things like, "Kids are resilient," and "everything happens for a reason," then disappeared back into their intact families. I stayed. Because leaving wasn't an option. Because when I looked at Eli, I didn't see a burden. I saw a child who had already been abandoned once. Money got tight fast. Elaine left behind a house payment, a utility bill, and silence. No forwarding address, no explanation. I picked up extra shifts at the hospital. Nights, weekends, anything they'd give me. I learned how to function on 4 hours of sleep and cold coffee. Some nights I came home, so tired my hands shook when I unlocked the door. Eli would be waiting. Always waiting. Not at the door, not running. Just sitting in the same spot on the couch, like he was guarding the house. "Did you eat?" I ask. He'd nod. "What did you have?" "Peanut butter sandwich," he'd say. Same answer, every time. I worried about it until his therapist explained that predictability felt safe to him. Familiar textures, familiar taste. So I stopped pushing. That was another thing I learned. Staying doesn't mean forcing, it means listening. The first time he melted down in public, I almost broke. It was a grocery store, fluorescent lights buzzing like angry insects, a baby crying 3 aisles over. Eli froze. His shoulders locked, his breathing went shallow, his hands clenched. People stared. One woman sighed, loudly like we were inconveniencing her. I knelt in front of him, blocking his view, lowering my voice. "Look at me," I said softly. He didn't. So I did the only thing that worked. I waited. 30 seconds felt like 30 minutes. Then his breathing slowed. We left without buying anything. In the car, I sat gripping the steering wheel, heart pounding, wondering if I was strong enough for this. Eli broke the silence. "I'm sorry," he said. That did it. I pulled over and cried. Not because of the store. Because no 6-year-old should feel like an apology. Years passed like that. Quiet victories no one applauded. Eli learning to tolerate haircuts if we scheduled them early enough. Learning that the truck idling calmed him when the world felt too loud. Learning that if I didn't rush him, he always found his way back. And slowly, almost invisibly, he changed. Not into the loud, confident kid people expected, but into something else. Observant. Precise. He noticed patterns I missed. Remembered dates I forgot. Filed away moments like they might matter later. I didn't realize then that while I was learning how to raise him, he was learning how people worked. And that knowledge would save us both. One night, years later, after a particularly long shift, I found him sitting at the kitchen table, papers spread out in front of him. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Organizing," he said. "For what?" He looked up at me, calm as ever. "Just in case." I laughed it off then. I didn't know, yet, that Eli had been preparing for a future I hadn't even imagined. Or that one day, staying quiet would become our greatest weapon. The broken laptop, the decision that changes everything, and the moment Marissa realizes her son sees the world differently, for a reason. The laptop didn't die loudly. No sparks, no smoke, no dramatic last gasp. It just stopped. 1 second the screen glowed pale blue, lines of code scrolling in quiet concentration. The next, it went black, like someone had flipped a switch on the future and decided we didn't get access anymore. Eli pressed the power button once. Nothing. He pressed it again, slower this time, like patience might convince it to cooperate. Still nothing. I watched from the kitchen table, pretending to balance the checkbook while really counting how many dollars I didn't have. "Something wrong?" I asked gently. "It's not responding," he said. His voice was flat, but I recognized the signs. His shoulders had locked. His fingers hovered just above the keyboard, not touching it. I leaned over, squinting like that would help. Maybe it overheated. I already checked, he said, then quickly added, sorry. You don't need to apologize, I said. Let me see. I flipped the laptop over and felt my stomach sink. The casing was cracked. Screws didn't match. The thing looked like it had been rebuilt by hope and duct tape. Pawn shop special. Bought with emergency cash I wasn't supposed to touch. Can it be fixed? Eli asked. There it was. Not panic. Not anger. Just hope. Yes, I said too quickly. Probably. That night, after he went to bed, I spread the laptop across the table like a patient on an operating tray. Burnt dust, stripped wires, a fried board. I rubbed my eyes. I didn't have the money. Not for repairs. Not for replacement. And definitely not for dreams. The next day, during my lunch break, I went somewhere I wasn't supposed to. The old equipment room at the hospital, where broken monitors and outdated machines waited to be thrown away. My supervisor caught me halfway through digging. Marissa, he sighed, what are you doing? Looking for parts, I said. Long story. He shook his head. Take what you need, just don't make it obvious. That night, I came home smelling like machine oil and bleach. Eli stood in the doorway, watching me lay out salvaged pieces like they were treasure. You don't have to do this, he said. I do, I replied. Sit. He sat. For 3 hours, we worked in near silence. The clock ticked, a truck passed outside, the house held its breath. Then Eli pointed. That wire goes there. I hesitated, then followed his finger. The screen flickered, then lit up. Eli exhaled like he'd been underwater. Thank you, he said. And in that moment, something clicked for me too. Eli didn't just use machines. He understood them. At the time, I didn't know he was building something. I thought it was just a hobby, a way to unwind after school. But the walls of his room slowly filled with sticky notes, diagrams, lists. He ate the same sandwich every day and typed until his fingers cramped. What are you working on? I asked one night. A way to make places quieter, he said. I frowned, like headphones. No, he said patiently, predictability. He explained it carefully, step by step, like he was afraid I'd miss something. An app that broke overwhelming places into manageable pieces, visual pathways, gentle reminders, knowing what came next before the noise swallowed you. I thought of grocery stores, of school hallways, of the way he shut down when life came at him all at once. If it helps you, I said, it matters. That was enough for him. The first time he showed it to anyone else, it almost ended everything. A small tech night at the public library, folding tables, burnt coffee, half the people looked lost. Eli stood behind the table, eyes fixed on the floor. You want me to talk? I asked. He shook his head. I can, he said, barely audible. Mid-demo, the screen froze. My heart dropped. Eli's breathing sped up. Fingers fluttered, then stopped. He closed the laptop slowly. I'm sorry, he said. It did. It's okay, someone said kindly. Technology does that. But I saw it. The way his shoulders folded inward. That night, he didn't touch the app. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. I found him sitting on his bed, staring at his hands. You quitting? I asked softly. He shrugged. Maybe it's stupid. I didn't hesitate. Stupid things don't help people, I said. This helps you. He looked up at me like I'd handed him permission to exist. The next morning, I made a decision that scared me more than any emergency shift ever had. I sold my truck. Old, rusted, reliable, and bought him a refurbished laptop that didn't wheeze when it turned on. When I handed it to him, he froze. "You need the truck," he said. "I can walk," I replied. "You can't replace time." He hugged me. Brief, awkward, real. Things didn't explode overnight. They grew. He refined the app, entered a small competition. Didn't win. But someone noticed. Then an email. Then a call. Then a meeting by the river, where numbers were spoken like they weren't life-altering. When the valuation came up, I felt dizzy. Eli just nodded. That's when the lawyer said something I never forgot. "Money doesn't change people," he said. "It reveals them." A week later, Elaine came back. The mother returns, curiosity turns into calculation, and everything Marissa built is suddenly under threat. Elaine didn't knock. She stood on my porch in the rain like she belonged there, like she'd only stepped out for a minute and finally decided to come back inside. Her coat was expensive, the kind of fabric that repelled water instead of absorbing it. Her hair was darker than I remembered, styled just enough to look effortless. She'd aged well, better than someone who had vanished for over a decade had any right to. I opened the door, and cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of wet pavement and river wind. "Marissa," she said softly, "can we talk?" Behind me, I felt it before I heard it. Eli's bedroom door creaked open, just an inch. "I think we've done enough talking for one lifetime," I said. Elaine's eyes flicked past me, scanning the house like she was taking inventory. Same floors, same walls, same life she'd once called suffocating. "I just want to see him," she said. "He's not a package," I replied. "You don't just stop by." Her jaw tightened. "I'm his mother." That word hit like a slap. I stepped outside and pulled the door shut behind me. Rain soaked through my sweater immediately, cold against my back. 11 years, I said quietly. "You don't get to say that like it's new." She sighed like I was exhausting. I wasn't in a good place. "You weren't in any place," I snapped. "You left." "I was drowning," she shot back. "You think it was easy being trapped with a child who—" "Stop," I said sharply. "Do not finish that sentence." Her mouth pressed into a thin line. Then her voice softened again, carefully rehearsed. "I've done a lot of work on myself." I almost laughed. Behind the door, Eli was silent. That scared me more than crying ever could. "I didn't come here to fight," Elaine said. "I came to reconnect." "No," I said. "You came to look." Her eyes slid toward the window, then the hallway, then the fridge. And stopped. On the newspaper clipping. "Local teen, DVLOPS accessibility app." Her breath caught. "What's that?" she asked. "None of your business." But I saw it. Curiosity turning into calculation. "Oh," she smiled slowly. "That's my son's name." My stomach dropped. "I should go," she said, already stepping back. "But I'll be in touch." "No," I said, "you won't." She paused at the steps and looked past me, toward where Eli stood just out of sight. "I missed you," she called softly. He didn't answer. The rain swallowed her footsteps. Eli spoke the moment the door closed. "She's lying." I turned. "You sure?" He nodded. Her breathing changed. I stared at him. "What?" "When she talked about feelings," he said, "she breathed faster. When she talked about things she wanted, she didn't." A chill crawled up my spine. 3 days later, the letter arrived. Certified, formal, polite in the way knives are polite. Elaine was seeking to reestablish a relationship and address financial matters. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the words until they blurred. Financial. I called the lawyer immediately. He read the letter twice, then leaned back. "She's going after control," he said. "Can she do that?" He hesitated. That hesitation hurt worse than any answer. "You're his guardian," he said carefully, "but biologically." "Say it." "If the judge prioritizes blood ties," he said, "you could lose decision-making authority over some of the assets." After everything, I didn't sleep that night. I imagined meetings Eli didn't understand, Elaine's hands on money she never earned, decisions made without us. In the morning, my hands were numb. Eli was already at the table, folders spread out neatly. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Organizing," he said. "For what?" "Court." My chest tightened. "This isn't your job." "I know," he said, "but it's my life." He slid a folder toward me. Emails, voicemails, dates, times. "You kept all this," I whispered. "Yes." "Why?" He paused. "Because she said once," he replied. "Don't call me again unless there's money." 6 years ago. I remembered. I sat down hard. Elaine hadn't just abandoned him. She taught him something. That people tell the truth eventually, if you let them talk long enough. The meetings came fast after that. Elaine played the part well. Soft sweaters, no jewelry, trembling voice. "I only want what's best for my child." Her lawyer smiled. "Your mother has followed your journey from afar." "No," Eli said calmly. The room stilled. "No," the lawyer echoed. "She hasn't," Eli replied. "If she had, she would know what my work actually does." Elaine stiffened. Later in the parking lot, I asked, "You okay?" He nodded. "She explains herself too much." I frowned. "What does that mean?" "People who tell the truth don't need to." I almost ruined everything. One night, angry and exhausted, I considered posting everything online. The emails, the voicemails, the truth. Eli stopped me. "Data only works if it stays clean," he said. That was the first time he called me mom without hesitating. I put the phone down. 2 days before the hearing, Elaine filed an emergency motion. "They're rushing," Eli said calmly. "What if we lose?" I asked. "Then we still have the truth," he replied. "And the truth is patient." The courtroom, the lies unraveling in real time, and the moment silence becomes the most powerful weapon in the room. The courthouse smelled like old paper and floor polish. That smell hit me the moment we walked in, mixing with sweat and nerves, and the faint bitterness of burnt coffee from a vending machine somewhere down the hall. The courtroom was already half full. Faces I recognized, people from church, a couple of nurses from the hospital, even one of the old guys from the VFW sitting in the back like he was guarding the place. Word travels fast when money and family collide. Elaine sat at the opposite table. Her back was straight, hands folded neatly in her lap. She wore a soft gray sweater, no jewelry, hair pulled back just enough to look fragile. She looked composed. I didn't. My knee bounced under the table. My palms were damp. I kept repeating one sentence in my head like a warning label. I am not his biological mother. The judge entered. We stood, sat. The gavel struck once, sharp and final. Elaine's lawyer went first. He painted her as a woman who had struggled, a mother who had needed space to heal, a parent who had been unfairly distanced from her child while his life and fortune had grown without her. "She only wants what's best for her son," he said smoothly. Elaine dabbed her eyes at exactly the right moment. I stared at the table, hands clenched. Then Elaine took the stand. She spoke softly, carefully. About mental health, about fear, about loving from afar. I never stopped caring, she said, voice trembling. I felt heat rise in my chest. I could stand up. I could shout. I could list every night Eli cried himself to sleep. But I didn't. I remembered the whisper. Just let her talk. Elaine talked. About birthdays she couldn't quite remember, schools she named wrong, therapies she claimed to support but couldn't explain. Her lawyer guided her gently, keeping everything vague. Safe. Then it was our turn. Our lawyer stood slowly, adjusted his glasses. Mrs. Whitmore, he said calmly, when was the last time you attended one of Eli's therapy sessions? Elaine blinked. It's been a while. How long? She shifted. Several years. Can you be more specific? I don't recall the exact date. Our lawyer nodded. Do you remember his therapist's name? Elaine opened her mouth. Closed it. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. My heart hammered. Are you aware, the lawyer continued evenly, that Eli has a documented allergy to peanuts? Elaine frowned. He never had allergies. Eli stiffened beside me. Would it surprise you, the lawyer said, to learn that this allergy has been documented consistently for over a decade? Elaine glanced at her lawyer. Too late. The judge leaned forward. Then Eli was called. He walked to the stand without hesitation. Sat. Adjusted the microphone with careful hands. State your name, the judge said. Eli Whitmore. His voice was steady. Elaine smiled at him. He didn't look at her. I brought records, he said. He handed over neatly organized folders. Emails, voicemails, logs. Why did you keep these? The lawyer asked gently. Because consistency matters, Eli replied. Elaine shifted in her seat. Eli read dates, times, words. On March 15th, 2017, at 2:32 p.m., my mother stated she did not want responsibility and asked not to be contacted again. Elaine's lawyer jumped up. Objection. Overruled, the judge said. Eli didn't pause. Another email. Another voicemail. No anger, no emotion. Just facts. Elaine shook her head. That's out of context. Eli tilted his head slightly. There is no context, he said, where those words mean support. Silence filled the room. Heavy, absolute. Mrs. Whitmore, the judge asked, do you dispute the authenticity of these records? Elaine opened her mouth. Closed it. No, she whispered. The ruling came shortly after. Elaine's request for control was denied. Court costs assigned. Warning issued. The gavel fell. It was over. Outside, cold air hit my face like freedom. Elaine walked past us without a word. No apology, no goodbye. Just the echo of heels on stone. Eli turned to me. Are you okay? I nodded. For the first time in a long time, I meant it. The aftermath, the quiet victory, and how staying changed both of them forever. The courthouse steps felt colder than they should have. Not just the stone beneath my shoes, but the air itself, sharp, biting, like it wanted to remind me that relief and fear can exist at the same time. Elaine walked past us without a glance. No tears. No last words. Just the sound of her heels echoing away until even that disappeared. I thought I'd feel triumphant. Instead, my hands were still shaking. Eli noticed. You don't have to be strong anymore, he said quietly. That almost broke me. The days after the ruling felt unreal. Like the world had decided to move on, without checking whether I was ready. I went back to work, fixed pipes, answered radios, logged maintenance reports like nothing had happened. But every time my phone buzzed, my stomach tightened. Every envelope in the mail made my pulse jump. Elaine didn't call, didn't text, didn't try again. And that silence, somehow, was louder than any argument we'd had in court. One night, a week later, Eli asked if we could walk by the river. It was early morning. Fog hung low over the Mississippi, blurring the water and the sky together. We didn't talk at first. That was our way. Then I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest. "How did you know?" I said. "Back then, in the courthouse." He thought for a moment. "People who lie," he said slowly, "add details to protect themselves. People who tell the truth don't." I nodded. All those years I thought staying meant doing more, working harder, fixing everything with my hands. Turns out staying also meant knowing when not to interrupt. Life settled into something quieter after that. Not easier, just steadier. The app grew, but Eli never chased the noise around it. He turned down flashy interviews, passed on investors who wanted control. When I asked him why, he said, "Loud things don't last." Instead, he used the money carefully. Therapy access for kids like him. Better tools. Small scholarships. Nothing dramatic. Just impact. One Tuesday night, Eli asked if we could use the church hall. "For what?" I asked. "A meeting," he said, "for parents and kids who don't fit neatly." So we did. Folding chairs, bad coffee, a cardboard box for donations. 6 people showed up the first night. 12 the second. I talked about paperwork, burnout, staying when leaving would have been easier. Eli talked about routines, patterns, predictability. People listened. Some cried. Some just nodded like they'd finally been seen. I still thought about Elaine sometimes. Not with anger. With distance. I realized something important. Family isn't who shares your blood. It's who stays when the lights are off and nobody's watching. One evening, as we locked up the hall, Eli stopped me. "You almost didn't let me talk," he said. I laughed softly. "I know." "Thank you," he added, "for trusting me." I swallowed. "Thank you for staying." The final chapter, what staying really cost, what it built, and why silence sometimes saves everything. People think the hard part ends when you win. They imagine relief washing over you like a clean finish, a moment where everything finally feels fair. That's not how it works. The real cost of staying doesn't come due in the courtroom. It shows up afterward, quietly, when no one's watching anymore. A month after the ruling, I woke up one morning and couldn't move my left hand. It was numb, stiff, curled like it had forgotten how to open. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at it, trying to will it back to life. Years of overtime, night shifts, carrying more than I should have. Staying has a price. I shook it loose eventually, but the message stuck. I'd spent so long holding everything together that I hadn't noticed what it was doing to me. Eli noticed. "You're not a machine," he said later that day, watching me flex my fingers. I smiled, funny coming from you. He didn't smile back. "I mean it," he said. The town changed how it looked at us. Some people treated us like a success story. Others treated us like a warning. At the grocery store, strangers whispered. At church, people asked careful questions that weren't really questions at all. "Must be nice," someone said once, nodding toward Eli. I wanted to ask what part looked nice. The nights he couldn't sleep. The years of silence. The fear that never really leaves. but I just nodded and moved on. Staying teaches you when words aren't worth spending. Eli started speaking more at the support group. Not long speeches, just precise ones. He explained why certain environments shut him down, why predictability wasn't control, it was safety. Parents leaned forward. Kids relaxed. I watched something shift. For years, I'd been the interpreter between Eli and the world. Now he was doing it himself. And he was good at it. One night, after everyone left, Eli sat beside me in the empty hall. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Regret what?" "Choosing me," he said. The question landed heavy. I thought about missed vacations, missed sleep, missed versions of a life I might have had. Then I thought about the boy who once counted tablecloth squares to survive a goodbye. "No," I said. "I regret the things that made staying necessary, not staying." He nodded like that answer fit somewhere deep inside him. Elaine tried once more. "Not legally. Emotionally. A message through a mutual acquaintance. She wants to apologize," the woman said gently. I asked Eli what he wanted. He thought about it longer than I expected. Then said, "Apologies change behavior." I didn't argue. Neither did the woman. Time passed. The app stabilized. The money stopped feeling dangerous. Eli started planning for college, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He chose a school close enough to come home when the world felt too sharp. I learned to let go without disappearing. That was harder than I expected. On the anniversary of the court ruling, we went back to the river. Same path. Same bench. Different weight. "I used to think staying meant never leaving," Eli said. "What do you think now?" "I think staying means not running," he said, "even when you could." I watched the water slide past us, patient and unbothered. The truth really is like that. It doesn't rush. It doesn't shout. It just keeps moving until everything else has to get out of the way. The final chapters, legacy, healing, and what remains when the noise finally fades. Time didn't heal everything. It softened the edges. That's the truth people don't like to hear. A year after the court case, our house still held echoes, not of shouting or chaos, but of moments that had shaped us so deeply they never fully left. The kitchen table, where Eli once counted patterns to stay calm. The hallway, where I stood frozen the night Elaine walked out. The porch, where she returned for the wrong reasons. Nothing looked different, but everything felt different. Eli turned 18 quietly. No party, no crowd. Just a cake from the grocery store and 2 mismatched candles, because I forgot to buy numbers. He didn't mind. "I don't like attention," he said, smiling just enough to show he meant it kindly. We sat together after dinner, the house warm and still. "You know," I said, "you don't need me the way you used to." He considered that. "I need you differently," he replied. That stayed with me. Staying changes shape over time. It doesn't disappear. He started college that fall. Close enough to come home on weekends. Far enough to feel like his own person. The first night he stayed in his dorm, I stood in his empty room longer than I meant to. The sticky notes were gone. The diagrams packed away. The silence felt unfamiliar. I didn't cry. I breathed. Because staying had taught me that letting go wasn't the same as losing. The support group kept growing. Parents who looked like I once did, exhausted, unsure, holding themselves together out of necessity. I didn't give advice. I told stories. About mistakes. About patience. About staying when the world suggested you walk away. Eli came when he could. Sometimes he spoke. Sometimes he just listened. Both mattered. Elaine faded into something distant. Not a villain. Not a lesson. Just a fact. Occasionally, someone would mention her name. It didn't sting anymore. I realized that closure isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you build when you stop waiting. One night, Eli came home later than usual. Sat at the table like he used to. "Something wrong?" I asked. "No," he said. "Something right." He told me about a kid in his class. Overwhelmed, brilliant, misunderstood. I helped him explain himself, Eli said. I felt my chest tighten. That was the legacy. Not the money. Not the app. The quiet transfer of understanding. I finally took fewer shifts at the hospital. Learned to rest without guilt. Learned that staying also meant staying for myself. My hand still stiffened some mornings. A reminder. A price. One I accepted. On a late autumn afternoon, Eli and I walked the river path again. Leaves skittered across the pavement. The water moved slow and sure. "I used to think silence meant weakness," I said. He shook his head. "Silence is only weak when it's forced," he said. "Chosen silence is control." I smiled. He'd surpassed me in ways I never expected. And that was okay. We sat on the bench, watching the sun dip low. No urgency. No fear. Just presence. Staying doesn't make you loud. It makes you solid. And sometimes, that's what remains when everything else falls away. The full circle ending, the truth about family, and why some stories don't end loudly, they end honestly. People still ask me how I did it. How I stayed. They ask like staying was some heroic act, like I woke up every day brave and certain and strong. That's not how it happened. Most days, staying looked like exhaustion. Like second-guessing myself at 3 a.m. while the house slept. Like standing in a grocery aisle wondering if I was failing a child who never asked to be chosen. I didn't stay because I was fearless. I stayed because leaving would have broken something I couldn't fix later. The morning Eli left for college for good, not just for the semester, but for the life he was building, I didn't cry. I helped him load the car. Double-checked his list. Watched him pause in the doorway one last time, scanning the house like he was saving it somewhere permanent. "You okay?" he asked. "Yes," I said honestly. Because I was. Staying had taught me that love doesn't cling. It prepares. The house is quieter now. Not lonely. Just spacious. Sometimes I sit at the kitchen table with my coffee and listen to the refrigerator hum, the same sound that once filled unbearable silence. Now it feels steady. Familiar. Safe. I've learned something important over the years. Pain doesn't disappear. It transforms. And if you let it, it turns into wisdom instead of bitterness. Eli still calls. Not every day. Not on a schedule. But when he does, it's intentional. He tells me about his classes, his projects, the people he's learning to navigate. He tells me when the world gets too loud. And when it does, I don't rush to fix it. I listen. Because that's what staying looks like now. Someone once asked me if I hated Elaine. I thought about it. About the years. The courtroom. The choices she made. "No," I said finally. "Hate takes too much energy." And the truth is, she didn't win. But neither did I in the way people think. What won was consistency. Patience. Silence. Truth. The things that don't look powerful, until they're the only things left standing. Eli came home last winter for a visit. Snow thick on the ground. Same coat rack. Same hallway. He stood in the kitchen and smiled faintly. "Smells the same," he said. I laughed. Some things don't need upgrading. That night, we sat at the table like we always had. No agenda. No tension. Just shared space. "You know," he said, stirring his tea, "I figured something out." "What's that?" "People think family is about origin," he said, "but it's really about endurance." I swallowed. He didn't look up. He didn't need to. I used to think my story was about sacrifice, about what I gave up. Now I understand it's about alignment. Choosing the harder path because it lets you sleep at night. Choosing to stay because someone needed to know they were worth staying for. That changes a person. Both of them. If you're listening to this and you're tired, if you're the one holding everything together quietly, if you've ever wondered whether staying matters when no one thanks you, it does. Not loudly, not immediately, but deeply and permanently. Eli is building a life that fits him now. One with boundaries. One with purpose. One with silence that feels chosen instead of forced. And I'm building mine too. Not around him, but alongside who he became. Some stories don't end with applause. They end with peace. With a quiet house. With a phone call that comes not out of obligation, but out of trust. That's how